Hi, hello, how are you? I fucked up a lot of film last year and just wanted to talk to you about it. 2023 was the year that I got into self-developing and processing my own film. AKA, I was broke as hell and could not afford the lab fees anymore, unfortunately. Speedy to our photo if you're watching this, which I doubt you are. I miss you guys so much. You know, I didn't realize the blood, sweat, tears, and firstborn sacrifice I'd have to make to get my photos developed by myself, but here we are. And I'm going to talk to you about it so that you don't make the same mistakes that I did. Before we get started, I wanted to preface this video and let you know that I am just a film girly on the internet that decided to develop film on a random Tuesday in 2023. I don't have the answers to everything, unfortunately. Most of the conclusions to the mistakes I've made in this video are just based on speculation with the help of Reddit and trial and error. With that being said, we're going to start off light with the role that I shot at the Strawberry Patch. The film stock I used on the shoot was Color Plus 200. It's my go-to film stock of choice. I absolutely love this shoot. I exposed properly on a blue sky day, which is rare for me and unheard of. My sister was also a very lovely model, but I ended up with this on my pictures, and these are frame lines going through the middle of my photos. So how does something like this happen? I dried two rolls a little bit too closely together, and the bottom edges ended up sticking together during the drying process. To my horror, the only way to solve this is to pull the frames apart, which is what I did, and voila, these frame lines magically appeared. I'm actually not that mad at the end result. I think it gives the photos a lot of character. I did try and edit the frame lines out in post, but the amount of effort put into editing just wasn't worth it for me, so I think I'm gonna leave it. What would you do? Let me know in the comments if you would edit these out or if you'd leave them in. What are some things that I would do differently? I think this one is a given. I am now spacing out my film rolls during the drying process and weighing the bottom edges down with heavy clips so they don't sway. Also, if I remember correctly, I was developing these in the middle of summer and my AC unit was on. So obviously I'm gonna turn that off from now on too. All right, let's move on to the rafting trip. This one made me so mad just because it was 100% preventable, and I'll get into that in a little bit. This roll was shot on Portra 400, and I risked all my camera gear on a little raft to create content, and these are how the photos turned out. Not great. So how does this happen in development? I think my plan was to experiment with push processing this roll, but I didn't push process in the end. I rated Portra 400 at 800 and never went through with the push processing in development, which is kind of important. So all my photos came out underexposed. Portra 400 is the least forgiving film stock with underexposure in my experience. So yeah, I got double fucked for nothing. So what would I do differently? I think I just need to live vicariously through Jason from Grainy Days' videos instead of trying to implement them, because I don't think push processing is my thing. The man does great work, but yeah, I don't think it's for me. If I did do it, I probably would try and mark my film with a Sharpie on the canister so I don't get the rolls mixed up of when to push process and when to not. But honestly, I think I'm just gonna avoid push processing altogether. This was also shot on Portra 400, and I know it's a little bit hard to tell what's going on or what the issue is, but I ended up getting these bright streaks through my frame. Bright or blue. I had a combination of both. If you see little specks, I'll get to that issue later in the video, but for now we're going to focus on the streaks. This set I was able to edit and post fairly easily, so I wasn't too disappointed. However, I did replicate this issue on my friend's roll of film that he shot of me, and it is way more prominent, I think, so I'm gonna put those up screen here too. I felt so bad because it's one thing to ruin your own film, but it's gut-wrenching to ruin somebody else's film. So Jonna, I'm so sorry, but I'm better at it now. So how did these streaks happen? This came down to a combination of incompatible equipment. When I pour developer from my amber storage jars alone, it's really slow. And when your initial pour is slow into the developing tank, since mine fills from top to bottom, it will kind of trail over your film. In turn, those trails will develop faster or slower than the rest of your frame. My bright idea was to get these fast pour spouts that bartenders use because, you know, they look so cool when they pour from them and it looks so fast, so it should surely work for developing bottles. No. It does not pour faster. It actually pours slower. Moving forward, what am I going to do differently? I'm going to keep the canister because I've already bought it. Obviously not going to use those fast pour spouts anymore. My workaround is I'm going to transfer my developer and Blix into glass beakers first and then pour from glass beakers because it is way faster to pour from a glass beaker than it is from my giant bottles that I have now. Also, Jana's roll of film was in a canister developing with 2 rolls, and I think that exacerbated things quite a bit and why his film looked worse than mine. I only had the 1 roll in the cherry blossom photos that I did, so I think I'm going to not develop 2 rolls at a time anymore and just stick with 1. It seems I've never had Portra 400 work for me. I swear if I'm not underexposing in camera, I'm fucking it up in post somehow. And I am absolutely jealous of all the film photographers that just love Portra 400 and can't shut the fuck up about it, but that is not me, unfortunately. If you can't guess, yes, this was also shot on Portra 400. This is Anderson and Watson Lakes, one of the most beautiful hikes in the North Cascades. And I know what you're thinking, there's these blue flakes again and you're still not going to talk about it? No. We're saving that till the end. For now, we're going to talk about this underdeveloped edge and how that happened. I think I just didn't fill my canister up all the way correctly, and yeah, that edge just sat a little bit higher than where the developer reached, and that's why it's a little bit darker. So what would I do differently this time around? I mean, besides the obvious of putting more developer in, like I said before, I think I'm going to use a glass beaker to measure out my developer before I pour it into the canister. That way I'll know for sure that I've put enough developer in. I know what you're thinking. This looks exactly like the issue with the rafting trip. Why are you showing us this again? Actually, something completely different happened, which was semi out of my control, semi not. So let's get into how did this happen. I usually buy the Cinestill liquid kit, and when the kit arrived, the seal of the developer part B was actually broken. So I went to Reddit and just did some research and was like, hey, is this still usable? And some guy on the internet was like, yeah, worked for me. And I took that as fact. The film stocks I decided to go ahead and try this developer with was Cinestill 800T and Kodak Portra 800. The color of the developer is what initially set off alarm bells. As you can see, it looks really dark in comparison to fresh developer. This is because when the part B seal was broken, the contents had oxidized. I first sacrificed the Cinestill because I wasn't too attached to the photos anyways. When I mixed the developer, it looked like it had like big chunks of coffee grounds in it, and this one photo in particular looked very ethereal and really cool actually, but the rest turned out like shit. Most of them look underexposed and have sort of weird color shifts. After I had developed the Cinestill, I was like, okay, well maybe this can be saved. Maybe if I filter out the coffee grounds, I'll get somewhere. And that's what I did. And that solved most of the artifacting problem I had, but again, the photos still looked very underexposed. Well, what would I do differently? I mean, the obvious solution is that if it looks weird, probably don't use it, but another solution that I'm looking into is using powder developer instead of liquid developer so that the oxidization does not happen at all. Alright, so we're finally gonna talk about it. The blue flakes, the mother of all mistakes. Not only do I mess up my rolls, Jana's rolls, I also mess up my boyfriend's rolls and a client's roll. This mistake honestly almost fucking destroyed me and almost made me quit developing film altogether, but I stuck with it and I'm still here. Where it all started was Logan's roll of film. He planned a very romantic getaway in Monument Valley. The trip itself was wonderful, but Logan's was the absolute worst and I could not fix a lot of it in post. I think there's one picture of me in the car that I salvaged, but most of everything else is just so unsalvageable that there's there's nothing I can really do. So how did this atrocity happen? It was a very simple mistake. After I got done with the Blix, I didn't rinse my film and went straight to stabilizing. It ended up flaking up, and that's what all the blue bits that you're seeing on all these frames are. Okay, yeah, but how did it get on all the other rolls of film that you're talking about? I couldn't see the emulsion flakes. They're pretty clear to the eye. Since I didn't know the emulsion had flaked off, I put the stabilizer back into its jar for future use, which ended up coating 10 more rolls of film with these little flakes without my knowledge. So what would I do differently? Maybe use my brain a little bit more, maybe get plenty of sleep the night before. On the real though, as much as I want to batch develop 10 rolls at a time, I think it's best to scan in between rolls to save my sanity. I know this whole video has been pretty dramatic, but regardless of all my mistakes, I assure you, I am still very in love with the process. If you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. My name is Felicia. I don't think I've said that before. Nope. Did not mention it. I'm gonna leave my Instagram up here. You can give me a follow if you'd like. It's @flowers. It's spelled FVLWRS. I know it's spelled weird. All the other spellings were taken. Please consider liking and subscribing to keep my small channel afloat. And happy developing, y'all. Especially if you're early in your journey, you already have a basis of what not to do since you watched this video, so you're off to a really great start. I'll catch you in my next one.